You are listening to the Better 2 podcast with DM Needham. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is author Jim Flynn. Jim's journey begins with an appearance on Jeopardy. Because he decided to take the time and write an article on the way back home about his experience on Jeopardy, he ended up getting an article published in a Sunday magazine. It was his first foray into publishing, and he even got paid for it. But he wanted security. He had 3 kids and a good paying job on the stock market and a wife. So he wanted to provide for them. That meant sticking with his job. However, one day when he was playing golf, well, something happened that would change his perspective and his life. And it would send him down the path of an author. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy the story. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, you seem to have a fascinating story. There were several things when I was digging into your background. That one thing that stood out was the whole Jeopardy thing, and that kind of sent you on your writing journey. And I actually have a friend who was on Jeopardy as well, and he lost during the final question, like you.
Yep. Well, it's at 2/3 of the people lose. So, yeah, you don't think about that when you're watching, but 2/3 of the people there go there thinking they're going to win. Everybody told them, "Oh, you should be on Jeopardy. You're really great." And then you go on and you don't win. It's not great.
Well, and nobody thinks about the pressure. I mean, it's like your mind, when you're under that pressure, sometimes you're going to choke. It just happens.
Well, for example, last night they had a woman on who basically didn't answer any questions. And you have to pass the test to get on. So she must have just had stage fright. Mm-hmm. Now, it is hard. The hardest part of Jeopardy, and people don't realize, is the buzzer. You have to have the timing of the buzzer down. You can know the answer. Doesn't help you if you're not the first one to ring in. You can't ring in too soon because you lock yourself out. So it's a timing thing. And that's why once the people have won and they have some experience with the buzzer, that's why they go on to win multiple times, because they have it gets more comfortable. Yeah, they've figured it out. So anyhow, I lost. It stinks.
But I mean, it still had to be an interesting experience to be on the show.
As you look back, it's great. The day after, it's not so great.
No. The day after, I imagine it's kind of like, well, I could have done better. And I think that if I remember correctly, the question, because it was my husband's best friend that was on it, he lost on something simple. It was a very simple answer. And once again, you just choke.
Yeah. Well, the answer, the final Jeopardy thing was sort of a pun. It was kind of convoluted the night I was on. I'm terrible at puns. I'm like the world's worst person at puns. I didn't even understand the question until about 5 seconds to go. I'll stop whining. I mean, I got to be on. I got to be famous for 15 minutes.
And you got to meet Alex.
That was all right. But
well,
Alex,
go ahead.
Oh, he's an iconic guy, but on the show, he doesn't have time to spend. He shakes, he does 5. Well, the late Alex did 5 shows a day.
Yeah.
So he wasn't going to sit there and have lunch with you.
Well, I think that's what, goes back to the magic of television. And I've talked to a couple of people about this. Nobody really realizes what goes into production.
Yes.
Everybody thinks, oh, well, he just has this one show and they're turning things out quickly.
Well, getting into the writing thing and seeing the production that goes into an audio book starts to give you some sense, and it's nowhere near as complicated as a TV show, but it gives you some sense of what goes on there. There's it's kind of seeing the magician do the tricks instead of just seeing the trick.
Right.
Yeah. And the audiobook, we'll talk about that. The audiobook's really a cool experience. So
I haven't, we'll get to the audiobook, because let's get to the Jeopardy thing, though, kind of led you to your first published piece.
yes.
That's why I brought it up first.
Uh-huh.
So go ahead and talk about that. You were published in the Sunday magazine.
Yes. I was a stockbroker that was my career. And during that time I was on Jeopardy. I thought it was an interesting experience, and I've always wanted to be a writer. And I did some writing in college. I was a sports writer. Thought about doing that for a career. Didn't end up doing that. On the way home in the plane, I started to write an article about what it's like to be a Jeopardy contestant. I'd never seen one, and it ended up being the cover story of the Hartford Courant Sunday magazine. The Hartford Courant's the big newspaper in Connecticut. And in those days, newspapers did well enough they could have a Sunday magazine. Now they're not doing so well. But it was a great experience for me. It was a very rewarding experience writing the article. I got paid for it. And I got fan mail from people I didn't know. I got phone calls. You should be a writer. You're funny. You should do it. I had 3 kids, a wife. They didn't want me to quit and make no money. So I kept working. I had a good job. I kept working for a long time. Then I had, as writers would say, I had an inciting incident. I didn't know what an inciting incident was when I started writing, by the way, but I had an inciting incident later on. We'll talk about that in a while.
So you decide that, and actually a while is here, because that's going to be the pivotal, that's the pivotal moment that really changed your life when you discovered, did you go to the doctor? Were you not feeling well? How did you actually realize that something's off here and I'm having issues?
Oh, this was a much more dramatic, inciting incident than that. I was out to play golf. Went out to play golf. I had a partner who didn't really know me. We're driving out in a golf cart, and for some reason, I decided to stand up and fall out of the cart onto my head.
Oh.
And the reason it ended up being is I had a brain tumor I didn't know about.
Yeah.
So I fell out on my head. I broke my skull. I broke my arm. I broke my vertebrae. I woke up in the hospital, and the doctor said, well, you have, all these things wrong. He said, it's because you had an undiagnosed brain tumor. It caused you to have a seizure and fall off the golf cart. And being me, I said, yeah, but other than that, how am I doing? I really did say that. So,
well, you got to, that's something that my husband would have been like, okay, so what's next?
Yeah, well, and what was next is I had brain surgery, which I tell people there isn't any minor brain surgery. It's a big deal. Yeah. So I got done with that, and I was lucky because other people didn't have as good outcomes as I did. I had a great surgeon, and it's a big deal. So I recovered from that, and I can fake being what I was before. But when they met, there's a really good book that I ended up reading subsequently called "You Ain't the Same When the Air Hits Your Brain." Wow. And it's written by a brain surgeon, and that's a kind of in joke they tell each other when they're interns and residents. But that's true. Once you've had brain surgery, you're not the same. And so I was going back to the financial world, and I couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. I had to fake it. I couldn't. My ability to do analysis, forget it. The other day, I have a tractor. I live on a farm. I have a tractor, and a little piece broke, and I was on the phone with the online service, and this company has great online service, and they sent me I don't know what, seen all those explosion diagrams. Here's all the parts exploded. And I said, I have no chance. Just tell me what to do. I have no chance of analyzing this. So that part of my brain doesn't really work anymore. So you go back in the financial industry, can't do it.
No.
So that was my inciting incident moment. Not the accident, not the brain surgery, but now I'm back, and I was on a team of people. So I could have chosen, and my boss said, well, just be like a figurehead. Just be the guy who glad hands people and takes them to lunch and all that. And I just said, I don't want to do that. If I'm going to be on the bus, I want to drive the bus. I don't want to ride on the bus. And so, and although this wasn't a financial hardship for me, I could afford to, I'm old, I could afford to retire, but I planned to work at least 5 or 6 more years than I worked. So I said, no, I'm going to go and retire and I'm going to start writing books. So that's what led me. It took a long time between that Jeopardy article and me deciding to write the first book.
Well, that's the thing, I remember for myself, I mean, I've always been writing since high school, and there's been a couple of times when I've kind of stepped away, but I've always continued to write. And I remember there was a contest that I sent in my first chapter to an agent, and I got a letter back from the agent saying, I want to see more. Well, I was too chicken, I guess, to send any more in.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, this was back in early 2000, late 90s, somewhere in there. And I was excited that I got this response. I didn't win the contest, but the agent was interested and was just like, okay. And I just let it go. And I look back now going, you're an idiot.
I agree. Not only that, but all the people I know who write would have been camped out at the agent's door.
I know.
Would have been there the next day saying, how many more chapters do you want?
I know. But see, here's the thing. I also look at my book now. That book, while bits and pieces have taken root in other forms of my other books, that book would never see the light of day. That book was never going to be good enough. And it took me stepping out of my comfort zone, and the inciting incident for my first novel to actually turn into something was the fact that the husband was on dialysis. I'm stuck at Barnes for 5 hours waiting for him. And I'm like, well, I'll just make this little marketing ploy and I'll create this journal for this bass player. And that's what I'll do. And I'll put it online. And at that moment, because he's a drugged out bass player, I'm having rehab centers liking my post. And I'm thinking to myself, are you guys thinking this is real? Well, maybe if you think it's real, then maybe there's a story here. So then I said, okay, I'll make it a book. And my friend was working at Barnes. They were closing that location. And she's like, well, we're going to have a new writer's night, one more. And that's it. And so I had an in. And how often do you get a shot to be in Barnes and Noble? Even if it's for one night. So it's like, all right, I'm going to finish my book. So that pushed me to get it done. Because my husband always joked, he's like, I'm not going to be around by the time you get your first book finished. I have 2 out before he died. And it was just kind of like, so I did it. So
your story, that's a lot different story than most people tell, but
it is.
But that's what makes life interesting. People have different stories, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And that it goes back to the better two thing, the better two moment. The fact of the better two moment is everybody's got one, whether it's something you look back with regret or if it's something you look back and go, because I took that fork in the road, this is where my life went. And I'm happy that my life went that way. So.
Well, fortune favors the bold, right? So
they say. So they say.
That's in my new book. I worked that into my new book. So
nice. I mean, I look at it this way. The reason I'm doing this is because, and this will be just bizarre as anything for you, the reason I get to be a podcaster now, which sounds crazy, I never thought about being a disc jockey. I never imagined being a disc jockey. I won a pizza off the radio station. I went to go pick up a cassette single. That's how long ago this was. And I recognized the guy's voice. He was the DJ that actually I won the pizza from. Him and I became friends, and he invited me to come to the radio station and hang out and program the station because he was bored. And lo and behold, my career was born.
That's cool. But you have the voice.
I do, but I didn't ever think about it.
Is it natural? Did you take lessons or?
It's natural. I did not take lessons. It was one of those things. In fact, the whole reason it happened was, so we started talking on the phone and he's like, and I'm going to be blunt with what he said. And yes, I was a married woman at the time, but we were friends. And he's like, I have to say your voice has a boner quality to it. Oh. He's like, you could definitely host them. You could do weather. You could be a weather girl on a radio. He's like, you have a voice. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, the only training I ever had was some singing lessons, and my vocal teacher at the time told me that, you can do one of the lowest notes and one of the highest notes. You have a very good range. So, but I never took diction, and I can fake a mean English accent. But
well, you have the clarity. And
thank you.
We'll talk about audiobooks later.
Well, come on. No, I mean,
well, when you want to do an audiobook and you're on Amazon, they have something called, they have Audible, and a subsidiary of Audible is ACX. That's the company that produces the books.
Mm-hmm.
So you send them an email. Hey, what do I do now? The first thing they encourage you to do is audition yourself. So what you do, you read the first 5 minutes of the book, which my first book, that was one chapter. So I did it. And I was so bad. I said, I wouldn't even listen to this book. So nobody's going to buy it. So then what you do on Audible is you can put it out for audition. I don't know if you're familiar with that experience, but it's really a cool experience. And it surprised me for my little book how many people auditioned for it and how good they were. They were tremendous. Because I listened to the first one, and I thought, well, I don't have to. This guy's great, right? And there were 30 guys who were great.
Wow.
So it was hard to pick, and they're auditioning to make a deal with you. Yeah. You're going to split the revenue somehow. You're going to pay them up front. There's all kinds of deals you can make with people, but you have a podcast, so you have this experience, but it's really cool to hear your book, an actor do your book.
Oh, I imagine.
That's even cooler when you get your book back from Amazon with your name on and your picture on the back and all. That's a really cool experience, but it's even cooler to hear your book read by an actor. That's it's great. And the last book I did was a little short, funny golf book. It wasn't, I'll talk about why I did it later. I didn't think it would do well on Audible at all, and it's doing great. So,
well, I mean, the thing is, content, people tend to like shorter things. The odd thing about my podcast is, yes, it is an hour-long podcast typically, but I'm okay with that because I think if I shorten this podcast to little increments, it's going to lose something. It's going to lose its flavor. Where people, if they're making a short trip or they're just taking a jog or quick jog, they can listen to a short or audible book. So
that's one side, but the other side is the people who are real Audible junkies. They sign up for it's like Netflix. You so much a month, and you can get one book or three books, no matter how much. Subscription service. That's right. The people on the subscription service, they want Game of Thrones, the whole thing.
Yeah.
They want 40 hours worth because it's just one credit.
Well, I have a friend who she's in manufacturing, and she said when she is working, she will listen to an audiobook because she doesn't want to hear anybody else's bull. She can just sit there, listen, and do her job. So
I'm finishing the third in my series of thrillers, and that's going to be an audio book as well. And what I'm planning to do is put them together in a box set.
Nice.
So you can get all three for one credit.
Nice.
And because people who buy books, especially Kindles, the electronic books, and audiobooks, they're really shop for bargains. They wait for sales. I don't know if you've had that experience. Now, paperback people seem to be different. They just buy the book. But the people on Kindle, they all wait for the deal, the 99-cent deal.
And the thing is about the paperbacks, Amazon will decide to change the price on your paperback without even telling you. And then when you go to start selling, I've had this happen. So I see that it's down. One time they actually had it cheaper than my author copy. I'm like, how is this even possible? And then so I pimp it. And as soon as I pimp it, one person buys it and the price went right back up. I'm like, how does this happen?
Yeah.
And so I reached out to them. They're like, we can change the price anytime we want.
Yeah, you read the contract, they tell you.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me too. Honestly, I didn't get in it to think I was going to make $1 million. I'd love to make $1 million.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give the books away. But I've always been just kind of amused by what Amazon does. They do this. Now they have their algorithm. They're very successful. They know what they're doing. They have their little algorithm. They'll just arbitrarily change the price. They've done that to me a few times. So, yeah, what can you do?
No, you can't do much. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about how Amazon is buying up old shopping centers now, because they're trying to compete with Walmart. So they want their distribution centers right there. And it's like, so we're going to basically have Walmart and Amazon battling it out. Yeah. And we're going to be in between.
That's, I will say it as an author. I call myself a writer. I think author, I'll call myself after I get a bestseller.
Yeah, you're still an author.
Yeah. I feel like a writer.
I understand.
Right. But as a writer, I think Amazon's fine. You know, I've had 99% good experience with Amazon, and it's really easy, as you know, it's really easy to put a book on Amazon.
It is. My experience, the only thing I find awkward, and I did Kindle Unlimited, and I took one of my books off Kindle Unlimited, and the other one's about to expire, because I don't necessarily see it as something that's beneficial always. Kindle Unlimited is a hit miss thing, you know.
I do much better with paperbacks. It's probably due to my demographic, old guys. Although my thriller books are about 50-50 men and women. My first book, can I go back and start at the beginning?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So here I am. I've had brain surgery. I tell people this and they think I'm kidding, but I actually have a hard time reading since my surgery.
Okay.
They say, well, you write these books and you can't read. Well, it's not that I can't read, but I have a hard time concentrating for more than a few pages. So I mostly consume my books through audio. But it's a different part of your brain. Writing is a different part of your brain than reading. Yeah. So I can write a book all day long. I also have trouble with light. That's why I don't really think I'm the coolest guy at the beach.
No, I figured.
When I have the lights on, I have to wear sunglasses. So,
I figured. I didn't think anything about
it. Yeah, I'm not trying to be the coolest dude or anything. But if I try to, how the Zoom stuff works. If you don't have the light, you look like you're 400 years old. So. And I only look 100 years old with the light. So
you look fine. So, but I figured when I saw you with the glasses, I'm like, it's because of sensitivity.
Yeah. So I won't get into all my medical stuff, but so anyhow, I decided I'm going to write this book, and it was sort of okay. I wrote this story about being on Jeopardy. Now I'm going to write a book about. Here's the things what else did I do that was really interesting that other people haven't done? Nothing. So I'm just going to make up this character, and I'm going to make up stuff that he did. It's kind of a Walter Mitty story, except I don't know if you remember having to read Walter Mitty when you're in school. Walter Mitty, it was all a fantasy to him. He was thinking he had a harem, and he played center field for the Yankees, but it was all a daydream for him. My character really does all the stuff in the book. And he's a baseball player at Stanford University, wanders into football practice, ends up in the Rose Bowl, ends up getting drafted by the Oakland Raiders, plays in the Super Bowl. He's an astronaut. He's an astrophysicist, plays in the Masters tournament. He just, I either had some experience at doing these things, or in the astronaut thing, I've always been an astro buff. I did a lot of research, and people tell me it's pretty realistic. The experience is, although it's funny, and I tried really hard here's what it's like to play in a football game. It isn't like watching it on TV. No. It looks like you're in a car accident every play. And I talk about that. And I talk about what it's like to be an Apollo astronaut. And I did a lot of research on that. But you went to school, and you know that a novel entails character development.
Mm-hmm.
You take a callow, inexperienced guy, in my point, and he goes through all these trials and tribulations. He comes out the other end as a man and full and a changed character. Usually it's better character arc. The person improves. The Godfather guy gets worse. Michael becomes this terrible guy.
Yeah.
But character has to change. The character develops. Well, as I was writing my first book, I had just been my 50th high school reunion.
Wow.
And this will make some people mad, but I noticed that the same guys who are jerks when they're 18 are still jerks when they're 68.
Yeah.
So most people don't change. So I said, I'm not going to follow the formula. My character isn't going to change. He's going to stay the same. So it's kind of a long stand-up comedy routine by this main character who talks about all these experiences, but it's really funny. And after I figured out how to market it a little bit, it became pretty successful for a book that was hard to put in a genre. I'm sure your books are in a specific genre.
I have a hard. I mean,
you have the same time. Yeah.
My very first book, the Bass Player's Journal thing, My Days with Dark News. I typically call it realistic fiction because it doesn't really fit in a pigeonhole place.
Well, it sounds kind of like my book. Here's what it's like to do this sort of thing.
It's his journal, and he's a drug addict. So and there's a twist at the end. So there's this whole world of his reality, and it's augmented. And if you pay attention, you'll understand why it's augmented and everything. But it's not anything you're going to say, okay, well, it's not, because some people, because of the twist, they would say, well, maybe it's time travel. Maybe it's this. You never know. And that's the thing. It's like, I like to just say it's realistic fiction. Well,
I learned to write for me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm going to write what I like, and I hope it finds an audience.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to be. I'll get into the thrillers. I'm not going to try to be the guy who writes Jack Reacher or Spencer for Hire, because that's not me. I'm going to be me, and write what my favorite form of entertainment are long form TV shows. So I think of my thriller books as being one season in The Americans or Dexter or Person of Interest. That's the kind of entertainment I like. And those shows have character development, but not the same way as a novel. It's slower. It's slower character development. And I'm also funny. I'm a naturally funny guy. Get back to my first book. Even though it was hard to put in a genre, it was pretty successful for a little book like that. And I got people to read it who I consider to be real serious authors.
Nice.
Who I didn't know, who sent me encouragement. Hey, nice. Your book was really good. You should write more. A lot of them said, a lot of good writers aren't good at being funny. And you're naturally funny. So keep writing. But some of the people said, if you want a broader audience, you have to write a novel. Because, and I did a lot of studying on that, and you probably heard all that stuff about how humans are sort of hardwired to want the hero's journey story, the Luke Skywalker model, I was
going to say, my first book, I was told an author friend that read it right out the box. She's like, this is a dark book. Now, Game of Thrones is out at the same time. Yep. This is too dark. You have to redeem him somehow. This is too dark. Nobody's going to like him. And it's like, and fun fact from a woman's perspective, women do not like to read books where the guy cheats. And I'm thinking, it's okay if the woman cheats, but a man cheating is a big no-no, especially in romance. And not that I'm a romance writer, but this is what I've been told. And it's like, but it happens. He's a rock star. You think he's going to be faithful? He's got women throwing themselves at him, and you think he's going to be faithful.
Oh, okay. Women don't like those books.
No, they don't like people. They don't.
People told you that, or is it really true?
This is what I've been told, and this is the general consensus. And there's a whole category now called rock star romance.
Okay.
And if you're a rock star romance writer, which I am not, they will sit there and say that they do not want the man to cheat on the woman. That is a non-starter. They will close the book, do not finish, whatever. The only thing I came close to writing a romance was my second book, and it's a romantic suspense. And I did that because I was doing a contest, so I had parameters to follow. While there are elements of romance in some of my books, I don't care if you don't like it. He's going to cheat. He's going to cheat. Yep. That's the way life is. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't personally know any rock stars, but I think you're probably right.
Come on. If you're a good looking guy, you're up on stage being adored, and you go back to the hotel and there's women lined up for you. Are you going to dabble?
Well, I'm too old to.
Well, I know, but I'm saying as a younger man.
Yeah. When I was a rock star.
As a younger man, I mean, you got to, let's be real, I mean, it's human nature, and it's not about breaking your marriage up. It's just the fact that sometimes you have needs.
Well, along the same line, I decided I'm going to learn to write a novel. I couldn't have defined what a novel was.
Okay.
And there are a lot of people walk around who can't really tell you what a novel is. In fact, some of them are people who teach you to write a novel, and they're not very good at telling you what a novel is.
True.
But as you start to do it and get advice from people, they tell you, oh, you're writing a thriller? Don't make it funny. Just like you're saying a rock star shouldn't cheat. Don't make it funny. People have a certain expectation of a thriller, and they don't want humor in a thriller. And I said, you know what? If I never sell another book, I'm not going to starve to death. I'm going to write what I want. Mm-hmm. So I have a thrillers that are funny. And if you read the reviews to my books, people say, hey, I laughed out loud at this book. I was surprised. And I'm pretty good at throwing it in when you don't. That's one of the things that makes humor funny, is that you put it in when people don't expect it.
Right.
And I'm not going to stop doing that, because that's just naturally who I am. And hopefully I'll be really successful, but I'm going to keep writing. And go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're truly a writer, and I mean, I consider myself, I'm not an English major. I consider myself a storyteller, and that's where my success as a writer is. I am a storyteller. I can hire somebody to fix it grammatically. But the fact of the matter is, if you are not writing something that you are passionate about, and you're sticking to a parameter where you're being told what to write, you're not being true to you, you're not being true to your art, and you're not being true to your voice. So therefore, the writing it's not going to be as true and pure. There are people that write books that turn out books one a month, which blows my mind. And there are people that consider themselves authors that hire ghostwriters, which blows my mind, because I could not understand how anybody could hire a ghostwriter and then put their name on the book, because it's a lie.
Well, I can't figure out people like that either. I just try to stick I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to stick to doing what I'm doing as long as I can do it. I really enjoy doing this. I mean, it's not that I write for 12 hours a day, or I do some other things in my life, but I write pretty much every day.
And you have to, because if you don't write, when you truly are a writer, if you don't write, it starts to bother you.
Yeah. You feel like something's wrong. I'm off balance here. I got into it. I have a pretty good discipline about writing every day, and I stick to it. And I'll tell you what, though, my first couple books, I sort of felt like I was doing a term paper, and okay, I'm done. I don't have to write anymore. And then I realized, as I progressed as a writer, no, you have to write the best you can do. You have to actually get rid of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
You have to write a lot more. I happen to see a documentary about Ken Burns, not by Ken Burns, but about how he makes the documentaries. And he said, I'm from the land of maple syrup. He said, so you get 100 gallons of maple syrup, or the stuff that comes out of the tree, and you boil it down to 2 gallons. He He said, that's how I do my documentaries. I get 100 hours and I boil it down to 2 hours. Well, I don't boil my books down that much, but I boil them down a lot more now.
Yeah.
And they're better. I'm getting better at it. I don't know if you remember Michael Lewis, but he wrote Liar's Poker,
Okay.
Moneyball. He's a really famous, successful author.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw him interviewed, and he wrote Liar's Poker in maybe late 80s, early 90s. He had to go back and read it for the audio version. He hadn't looked at the book for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I read it and I realized I was just learning how to write a book as I wrote that book. And chapter 8 is better than chapter 2. He said, I got better as I was writing the book. And it's funny because I went back and looked at my first book and I could see that in myself. Not that I'm comparing myself with Michael Lewis,
No, but
I'm definitely getting better as I go along, which is great. It's a lot better than getting worse.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing about being a writer. It's like I can look back, going back to that book I was talking about, the 30-year book. It's like I go back and I look at some of that stuff and I cringe because it's like while I was decent writer, I wasn't that good. And yep. I'm glad I waited to publish, and I'm glad I'm not using that 30-year novel because, there's a movie called Wonder Boys. I don't know if you're familiar with it, with Michael Douglas and
Robert Downey Jr. Yes.
Yeah. And he's got that novel that is just being cantankerous and it's just stacks of paper and everything. And then when it just all blows away, I mean, it's kind of like how I felt with the 30-year novel. It's like at a certain point, I can still use bits of it, but those characters, while some of them still resonate, they're not who they are. They've grown just like I have. They've changed just like I have.
But they also say that even really good writers go back and look at their first book, which might have been successful, and they're sort of embarrassed by it, a little embarrassed that, I could have done a lot better than that. So I think that's a fairly normal thing.
I think anybody that has creative talent does that. I mean, isn't it the truest statement that we're our own worst critics? And when we really look at ourselves, we will find flaws even when no one else will.
Well, I don't know. In the age of the internet, there's plenty of people.
Well, yeah. But I mean, it's still, we can pick on something that somebody else will never see.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's like I have a friend who's an artist and a pretty successful, famous artist, and he'll look at a painting and see where he did something wrong. And nobody else would ever even notice it. It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just, it's funny because we don't think about those things. I've talked to musicians here and we've talked about how, you miss one note and most people are not going to notice it. You noticed it. Maybe the true musician that's sitting out in the audience might have noticed it, but as long as it was in the same arpeggio, you're fine. But you have played the head game of I've screwed up.
Well, it's funny because I used to teach adult ed guitar. Mm-hmm. It's just a hobby. I was I was good enough to teach people. And I always told them, if you make a mistake, just keep playing because nobody knows. Yeah. There might be one person who knows. Just keep playing. And if you're not playing well, sing louder.
Well, whatever works to cover it up.
Yeah.
So I see that you talk about cyber crimes and cyber commands and Bitcoin. I take it you've done a lot of research in that area.
Well, let me go back to my first financial thriller. I see sex, money, and power are all fruits from the same tree. That's pretty much the theme of all my books.
Okay.
But I spent my career in the financial industry, so I see it through the lens of money. So Bitcoin is money. So that's why I talk about that. The first book is Losing Lola. That's the main character's name is J.R. Johnson. He's a money manager. Lola is this beautiful movie star, the most famous movie star in the world. He's afraid he's going to lose her account to a New York hotshot whose numbers are too good to be true. And it's based on Bernie Madoff, whose numbers were good to be. And Bernie Madoff just lied about his numbers. He never invested the money. He just made up all the performance numbers because he was running a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it just means you just pay people, you pay out later investors, you pay out early investors with money that comes in from later investors. And you just have to keep, it's the shark in Jaws who has to eat all the swimmers. So sooner or later, you eat all the swimmers in Amity Island, there's no more swimmers to eat, and the Ponzi scheme blows up.
Well, yeah.
That always happens. Well, that's what turns out in this book. So it's an investigation into Ponzi schemes. The thing I saw as somebody who handled money is people, even really smart, wealthy people, they all have this little thing in their brain. I'm going to get the secret sauce. I'm going to get something nobody else can get. When in fact, that's not the way to invest at all. Warren Buffett is the most successful investor in history. He just bought companies that were out there that he thought were bargains. He wasn't trying to get some special deal and some inside thing. People try to get this, and there are unscrupulous people in the investment business who exploit that. It just probably started with cavemen were probably doing Ponzi schemes. So anyhow, Lola gets involved in this Ponzi scheme. I'm not going to write a textbook on Ponzi schemes. It's a thriller.
Right.
There's people get killed, and there's bad guys, and all kinds of mayhem happens. It's funny, and there are some really good plot twists in it. A lot of people say, "Oh, your book should be movies." Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking when I'm writing it. I haven't heard from Steven Spielberg yet, but and I'm from Connecticut. There was a really big Ponzi scheme in Connecticut in the 90s, where big money, and the best way to explain it is it's a federal crime. So it was tried in federal court. In Connecticut, there was only one judge who could hear the case because the other 3 federal judges in Connecticut were all invested in this Ponzi scheme.
Wow.
So that's the kind of money these guys had.
Yeah.
And it was all playing on, hey, I'm going to get you in. The secret, the really elite people are getting in. And in fact, they'd take money. If you were breathing, they'd take money. And then Bernie Madoff was the same way. As long as you didn't ask too many questions, Bernie acted like you had to be invited to get in.
Yeah.
But when the sophisticated investors went and said, hey, you have really good numbers, can I see I know somebody who ran a lot of money, went to see Bernie Madoff, and Bernie said, oh yeah, I made 22% and all that. He said, well, let me see your results. No, Bernie wouldn't show anybody who knew what they were doing, the numbers.
Yeah.
So anyhow, people fall for that sort of thing. The second book is about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has the same characteristic in that it's the secret sauce. People don't even really know what it is. I did do a lot of research on it, and I don't really understand a lot about Bitcoin. And I understand more than 95% of people who own Bitcoin. And they say, oh yeah, we have to understand the wallet and the this and the creation and the mining. That's not what the important thing about Bitcoin is. The important thing is, what's it worth? How do you evaluate what Bitcoin is worth?
Well, and now we're getting into the NTFs that people are talking about, selling rights to NTFs. And I'm just thinking.
Yeah, let's see. I have a video of LeBron James that you can get on YouTube, but I have the first one, so it's worth $1 million. I have a little hard time believing.
Well, and honestly, it's a numbers game. Yeah. Our whole financial system, unless you actually have, gold or silver or actual paper money, even though I know that doesn't hold the value it used to, what do you really have? I mean, I can go into your account and jack you. I can take all your money with a snap of a finger if I really wanted to.
Well, that's what I'm working on in my new book, in that But let's get back to Bitcoin
Go
for
ahead,
a second.
sorry.
Because I'll disagree with you for a second.
Okay.
Because if you want to, people say, oh, stocks, they're the same. They're just a, shell game. No, it isn't, because you own a fractional, if you buy Walmart stock, you own a fractional piece of that business.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a really small fraction, but Walmart generates X amount of money a year. You can create a model that values Walmart a lot better than you can create a model that values Bitcoin.
There was a time where I actually owned Walmart stock.
Okay.
So, I mean, I wasn't even going with the stock market. The stock market is, that can be a dicey thing, but that's still, you have something tangible. My point was that if it's not tangible, such as Bitcoin, what do you really have?
What's it worth? Well, there's a very interesting plot twist in the Bitcoin Gambit. You should probably read that. Nice
pitch there.
Yeah, if you're wondering about that, you should probably read that. And I'm not going to ruin the plot for you, but it has a very surprising ending.
Okay.
But now you're talking about, now we're in the world of, they call it fintech, financial tech. One of the reasons all this stuff is exploding is because there's so much money all of a sudden. The government has just printed money. They've created trillions, not billions, trillions. I remember when I started in the business, $1 billion was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now $1 billion is nothing. In fact, I was going to name my second book, Trillion is the New Billion.
Fair
because
enough.
People throw trillions around like they're nothing. When you pump trillions of dollars into the financial system, it goes around chasing things, more and more speculative things. So the millennials, they're not interested in regular companies. They want either companies that make things that Bitcoin uses, or they want Bitcoin itself, or they want NFTs, or they want all these bizarre things. When the money supply stops growing, the game of musical chairs is going to stop.
Yeah.
That's something that I explore in the new book, which isn't quite done yet. But let's see, I'm on the third draft. I'll tell you one thing that I've really changed from when I started. I was very sort of protective of my books. I didn't want anybody to read them until they came out. I said, oh, they're going to kind of steal them, and somebody will get the idea. So, and some the early books have too many typos, and I had to go back in and change them, and it was embarrassing. But now I have beta. You must use beta readers.
Yeah, I do now. I didn't at first, but I do.
I use beta readers, and they're great, and they're people who enjoy doing it because they like doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been very helpful. My new book, I have a couple of beta readers that I've used before, but I also have a third person who hasn't read the first two books.
Okay.
Because it's a woman. I wanted to see if she understood what's going on without having read the form.
Right.
Here's the character. And what she said is, you have to describe the characters. Because I have the characters in my head.
I've had that issue.
Yeah, she said, what does JR look like?
Yeah. I mean,
what does Sierra Quinn look like? And I said, well, I'm walking around thinking they're like real people, but if you're just picking up the book, you don't know that.
Right. I mean, we see the characters, in every form, shape, we totally see them. You brought up a point about pirating, and the fact is, whether you can have your book published, and this happens to several people on Amazon. They've actually had some author come in, take their book, change the cover, put a different title on it, and release it. And, the readers are who have ended up catching it and rallying to Amazon and getting it taken care of. And then, of course, there's the pirate sites that are just fishing expeditions.
Yep.
So there's all these fun things. Go ahead. I'm
an old guy, and I've decided I'm just going to keep writing the books. I hope they're successful. That's one of the things in my new book. The tagline of my new book is, what if a foreign power wants to ruin your life, your reputation, and your finances? what do you do?
Yeah.
And so that's what happens to JR in the book. That's how it starts. Well, somebody's after him. And the same thing's true with us in a much smaller way. If somebody wants to steal your book, they're going to steal it. Yeah. You can have all the copyrights and all that stuff in the world, unless you want to have 12 lawyers working for you all the time. You just have to keep writing better books.
Yeah. I mean, it's better. Now, I will say I always copyright my stuff. And I know a lot of authors that don't, but I'd rather have that peace of mind that if someone were to steal it, I have the proof to go, this is mine.
Yeah. Well, I do that too, but
yeah, I'm not going to go to court over it.
Yeah. I still feel like in the digital world we're in, and I'm such a novice compared to the crooks, compared to the guys who, can you imagine what kind of person, you're talking about somebody who has a ghostwriter and puts their name on it. What kind of person steals your book, puts in it? I mean, can you shoot them? I think you should be able to shoot them.
The funniest excuse I've heard about somebody doing this was, well, I needed to make some money.
Yeah.
So you pirated it was a best-selling romance book.
Yeah.
It's like, really? And I do want to add, you were saying about the billion or the trillion and billion, and all I could think of was Austin Powers when he gets unfrozen and he's like $1 million, and everybody just starts laughing.
Yeah.
Because that is the way it is. And you know, what's next after trillion? Because it's going to keep growing, especially with inflation going up and the cost of things going up. It's going to keep evolving.
You know, I'm fortunate enough that not for a car or my new tractor, but when I go to the grocery store, I don't pay that much attention to what things cost. I can afford to buy groceries. And for Thanksgiving, my wife said, I've been doing Thanksgiving for 50 years. You have to do it this year. So I went yesterday and I bought heavy cream, a quart of heavy cream to make whipped cream for the pie. Mm-hmm. And it was $7.50.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was last year, but it seemed like a lot. That seems like a lot. Yeah. And I went to buy sugar, and this was in a big supermarket. There was one bag of sugar.
Yeah.
All the rest of it was gone. So it is a little bit, I think that will subside. But we're still, it's funny you say about the Austin Powers, you know, that's one of the funniest things in the whole movie.
Yeah. I mean,
$1 million. Yeah.
When you look at the big picture of what the pandemic has done, it has shaken up a lot of things. And I'm not necessarily, you know, you have people going, I'm not going back to work in corporate America anymore.
Yep.
I'm going to pursue something that I'm healthy with, that I'm in a healthier place with. But yes, now we have the supply chain problem. So before we had the supply chain problem because we had people hoarding stuff, and now we have a supply chain problem for whatever other reason. And, you know, it's increasing prices, and it makes you kind of go, where are we going? Where are we headed? You know, eventually, hopefully things will get back to normal. The virus will die down and we'll end up in a better place. But until that happens, it's just kind of like, you know, it was funny because I read an article one day and it's like, COVID is, you know, tamping down. Everything is, you know, we're getting low numbers. And the next day the article comes out that COVID is surging. And I'm like, which is it?
Yep.
So, well, you know,
I don't give people investment advice anymore, but I do point out there are some sort of farcical things that go on. And as I said about the judges, it isn't just some schmo who's buying $200 worth of Bitcoin.
No.
You have people who are supposedly smart. Well, I did business with people who were smart, but not necessarily financially smart.
Mm-hmm.
And the most dangerous person to themselves is somebody who thinks, oh, I made a lot of money, so I know everything. They're the ones who get fleeced.
Well, you know, I had interviewed somebody for the show, and I was very surprised because she had joined a cult right after college. She had gone to Harvard. And in my mind, when I signed her up, I did not know this. And I was like, okay, so she went, you know, this person has to be somebody that is very malleable. She wouldn't be very educated, I would think. Oh, no. She went to Harvard, got her degree. And it's just kind of like, so even if somebody wants to believe something and that goes back to I'm
Yep.
the smartest man in the room,
Yep.
then they're going to believe it and they're going to buy into whatever somebody sells them.
Yeah. Well, people, that's what makes, if people weren't like that, we wouldn't have anything to write about.
This is true. This is very, very true. And people give us characters more than they realize. It's like the person. Go ahead.
There's no end. I mean, I'm already outlining the fourth book. I have an idea for a fourth book. I mean, that's what makes life interesting.
Mm-hmm. And it's like the person that says, "Oh, put me in your book." It's like, do you really want me to put you in my book?
It's funny you say that, because I put friends in my book just for laughs, mostly minor characters, and nobody knows it, and the person is amused by,
yeah,
Bob Jones is in the book, but you've had this happen, I'm sure. As you go through the drafts, a minor character might become a major character.
Oh,
yeah.
that book, My Days.
Yeah.
He was just a side character in that 30-year book, and he has his own book now.
Well, I actually had to tell 3 people. One of them was just an individual character. He became like a really bad guy. And I had to tell my friend, I had to change his name because people would think I had some vendetta against you. The people who know us would think, why do you hate this guy? And then I had sisters in the book, and I named them after a couple. I call them girls. I went to high school with. They're 70-year-old girls now, but I had to write to them and say, I had to change the names because people would think I don't like you, and I do like you.
Yeah.
So I'll name some, hotel clerk after you or something. But these sisters got a much bigger role in the subsequent versions of the book, and I had to make them into like generic, nothing names. That's part of the fun of it too.
Right. I mean, well, and that's the thing. Characters, until you actually put it to print, they're going to be evolving. I have a character in my second book that he decided when I was working on the follow-up to the book, the Days book, that he wanted to nose his way in. So it's like, okay, so now I have to navigate and change some things and fix some things. And I did. But his brother that's in that second book doesn't have the same last name. And I'm like, how did I do this? And I'm like, Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, and just go with it. So I was like, okay. So, I mean, your mind is constantly changing things, and dare I say it's playing Tetris, or you're trying to always put this puzzle together. Even when you're sleeping, sometimes you'll wake up with an idea, and I'm sure that's happened to you.
Well, that happened to me. I thought of the great plot twist for the Bitcoin Gambit at 3:00 in the morning. I woke up, I said, I knew kind of how I wanted to end, but I said, oh, this is perfect. I got up. My wife's used to this now. Got up, went out to my office where I'm sitting now, and started typing 3:00 in the morning. And it was perfect. And how am I thinking about this at 3:00 in the morning? I have no idea. But as I've learned the hard way, your brain is a funny place.
Oh, it is. It is. It is very much funny.
Let me just tell you, now we're talking about my brain. I was writing my third book. I've third of the financial thrillers. Actually, the fourth book. And I'm sure you can relate to this. You have to live, we were just talking about this. You have to start living with your characters a little bit. Some authors go off the deep end and lose touch with reality and think their cat's a person and all this. But my books aren't that serious. But you do start living with the characters a little bit. And as you also know, especially in a thriller, you have to get your hero in trouble. And it's got to be more and more trouble until you resolve it at the end, because that's what makes a good book. Think of James Bond, every James Bond book, or Austin Powers gets every comedy, romance. So I was living with that. And because of my brain stuff, I shouldn't have a lot of stress. Stress causes problems for me. So I should avoid stress. Well, you ever write a book? It's a very stressful thing to write a book.
Yeah.
So I was in the middle of this, and all of a sudden I said, I have to take a break. I have to just put this book down. And because it was causing some problems for me. So that's when I wrote what's now my fourth book, which is a golf book called Hit Your Second Shot First. I always said, I'm going to write a book, hit your second shot first. Ha ha, the guys would say. Well, I said, okay, I'm going to write the book. So it was easy because there's no characters in it. It's just kind of a comedy routine for 105 pages. And it took me about a month to write it. And it was a complete stress reliever. I can do stuff like that. It's easy for me to write. And it turned out to be pretty successful. It was the #1 sports humor book on Amazon for a week.
Nice.
And it's doing very well in audio, which also surprised me because it's a little short book. And my books tend to skew old, especially a golf book, or mostly older guys read golf books. Strangely enough, to me, it's doing quite well in audio. So anyhow, I did that and it kind of freed me up. And it also made me realize, you know what? It's not like I have a contract and somebody's paid me $1 million advance and I have to finish the book. I'm just going to finish it at now it's not like I don't write it anymore, but I just have a slightly more laid back attitude toward it. And it's just have fun with it. You can spend your whole life reading books about how to write a book. Mm-hmm. There's a million of them out there, and I've read a lot of them, and some of them are really very valuable. And one of them says, when you're writing, if it's not fun to write it, it's not going to be fun to read it.
Right.
And in my books, I want them to be fun anyhow, because they're funny and have a lot of action in them and so on. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to have fun writing the book. And I think the fun will come through for the reader. Well, and so I'm almost done with the next one.
For me, I mean, I live in the moment when I'm writing it. I try to experience it. I mean, if my character's crying, typically I am in tears. If my character's having fun, typically that's where it is. And there are days, and I know it doesn't work, I will write. I'll force myself to write, and I write very minimal. And it's tough. It's not good. While there's an idea there, it's not worth it. But then I can sit down and write, between 3,000 and 6,000 words in a day. And that's when I'm in the zone and it's flowing. And will there be changes? Sure. But it feels true and it's easy to read.
Yeah, that's true. Some days I write a lot and I end up with 2 paragraphs that I can use. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's the deal. Nobody promised you it was all going to be gems. So.
No, that's the nature of the beast.
Yep.
So I have to ask, is there anything you want to add to the podcast?
Well, the only thing I would say is the audiobooks they're kind of a species to itself. The producing an audiobook is a lot of fun. I would encourage people, you're going to put my sites on and so on, to go look at the audiobooks. I have a terrific, I'll go back to the first character. As you may remember, he played football for Stanford University and then played for the Oakland Raiders. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned all these guys. I listened to 30 different people. And I ended up with this one particular guy who's got the great radio voice like you. And he's an actor, and he's done, 100 audiobooks, and he's done commercials. And so he had only read the first 5 pages of the book when we decided to do a deal. So, okay, now send me the whole book. Send me the transcript, or what do you call it? Manuscript. Mm-hmm. So I send it to him, and he reads it, and he calls me a couple of days later. He says, "You're not going to believe this, but I used to be the public address announcer for Stanford University football team." And he says, "I got hired away. And you know who hired me? No, the Oakland Raiders." So the 2 teams this guy played for,
wow,
my narrator did the announcing for. And he has that kind of voice. And the funny thing was, the second book, his name was Gary Williams. I said, "Hey, Gary, I've written another book. It's a novel. It's not like the first book. There's strong female characters in it. There are conversations between 3 different women. There are Russian characters in it." I said, you want to do it? He said, yeah, well, I'll audition for it. Just like the first one. I'll read some. The guy's great. There characters between three women. You can tell which one is talking.
Wow.
And that's, I could take all the diction lessons in the world. I could never do that. And so you have to realize your strengths and weaknesses. I'm never going to be able to be the narrator of an audiobook. And by the way, I love getting up and talking and going to the library and shoot my mouth off. But doing an audiobook is a completely different animal. So I would ask people, if you're interested in the books, take a look at the audiobooks too.
Okay. I will definitely have all the links posted.
Your cat has made a few appearances behind you. I don't know if you noticed.
She does that. And I actually have a little kitty heating pad there because otherwise she will disturb me even more so when we are talking. She will start pawing me and whatnot. But so I understand about the audiobook because I've done some visual audiobook reading of My Days of a British Rock Star. So I'm reading as a British guy, and I've gotten told nice voice with my fake British accent, but really? It's unnerving because you're doing it on camera and the perfectionist in me comes out. So it's something that I have been told that I should do, and I may do it. So I don't know.
Yeah, do it.
Sure. So
that's the one thing I say to people when I give I say, don't have to raise your hand, but how many people here want to write a book? Yeah. And the answer is like, especially at a library, the answer is like all of them. Mm-hmm. I say, write the book.
Yeah. I mean,
write the book. It might stink. Just do it anyhow. You're going to write it 15 times. It's fun to do. And it might actually turn out to be good.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing with podcasting and anything that's creative. Yep. Do it because you never know where it's going to go. It may not, but don't get in it thinking you're going to make $1 million. Yep. Do it because you're passionate about it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I thank you, Jim, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Jim's journey was quite interesting, to start out on Jeopardy, to have his publishing career start with a magazine. And some people were like, well, that's not really starting a publishing career, but it's the first time he was published. And while it took years before it happened again, he still was brave enough to continue on. Having a position where, you have your identity kind of linked to that, and suddenly, something traumatic happens and your world is turned upside down. While you can go back to that position, if it's not the same and that part that you were connected to that you were passionate about is no longer who you are, then it's time to walk away. And that happens. I mean, I know he didn't have a traumatic brain injury. He had a tumor, which is just as bad. And as he was saying, which I didn't cover with him, which I could have, the fact is when you have a traumatic brain injury, which a lot of people don't understand, you can suddenly not be the person you were before. Your life can be totally chaotic depending on who and where that brain injury happened. For you, I read an article recently on a traumatic brain injury where this woman who married her fiance within the last 18 months suddenly couldn't remember the last 2 years of her life after a bad car accident. So she was married to a total stranger. When they asked her in the hospital, so are you married? She said, no. How would you feel? And suddenly, everything that she used to like, she wasn't that same person at all, but her husband was willing to stick with her and date her. So what he said about, opening up the brain, once the brain has air, it's not the same. Well, that's very true, because whether it be a bump on the head or brain surgery, your brain, a good knock can change who you are. Michael Hutchins from NXS had a traumatic brain injury, and, he lost his sense of smell and taste. And at a certain point, watching some documentaries about this, at a certain point, you end up, it starts bothering you because that's part of your senses. That's part of who you are. It's part of how you experience life. And imagine if you can't experience life fully. I dealt with my husband with that, with not being able to see. I could sit there and drive down the road and go, oh my gosh, look at the sunset. But he couldn't see it. He couldn't see it like I saw it. So I guess my whole point is about this. Number one, follow your passion. I'm sure if you have to keep a day job, do that, but follow your passion. Be true to who you are. Number 2, appreciate who you are and everything that you have. And I'm not meaning materialist. I mean, granted, material items are great, but appreciate your vision, your hearing, your sense of taste, your sense of smell. I mean, imagine not being able to walk up and smell a flower. Imagine not being able to smell food. It changes things, because part of like eating, part of that is savoring of the smell and the taste. And if it wasn't there, how would it be for you? So that's my little moment on the soapbox today. As I said, if you have, a passion, do it. I don't care if there's a million other writers. I don't care if there's a million other podcasters. You do you. It's important. So on that note, as always, the podcast is at better2podcast.com. If you want to be a guest on the show or you have questions, please email me at donna@better2podcast.com. All our social links are there. And so I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. This episode of the Better 2 Podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For.